Join the conversation
with Richard Dean, Brandy Scott and Tom Urquhart.
You're listening to The Business Breakfast on Dubai Eye on One.
Right, question for you all. Which profession has the worst reputation in the UAE? Is it the same profession as it was this time last year? Well, we can turn our attention to a survey that is conducted year on year to, unearth exactly that answer. Which industry has the worst reputation in the UAE? It's conducted by Insight Discovery. Their latest results are out. A little heads up. Last year, 2020, credit card companies topped the list. They came in at number one last year. But who is in the top five this year? Well, rather than me tell you, let's go to the CEO of Insight Discovery, Nigel Sillitoe, who joins us live on the line and live on Microsoft Teams as well. Good morning to you, Nigel.
Hi, Tom. How are you doing?
Good, my friend. Really good. Now, put us out of our suspense. Talk to us about the top five. Who's made it to number one spot in 2021?
Sure. There's been some movement. So you were right. Credit cards were worst last year. But this year, it's recruiters. And they actually surpassed themselves because they were considered worst by just about every slice and dice of our data, by gender, by age, by income group, by nationality, by which Emirates, and also by marital status. So in every scenario, they were considered the worst. But there was one exception, and that is Westerners considered independent financial advisors to have the worst reputation. But in order, it was recruiters number one, then it was credit card companies, telemarketers, estate agents, which I know you love on your show, and then independent financial advisors.
Let's start with the recruiters then. Is that because of what we've been through as a world, as nation, as industries over the last 12 months? Has COVID had an impact on recruiters?
I think it has. I mean, I should explain, there are obviously different types of recruiters. You have recruitment companies, you have executive search agencies, and you have internal recruiters. And I think next year we might actually ask people for their opinions of these different types of recruiters, because I don't think executive search firms would come out too badly. But the issue with recruitment companies is that they're not the best communicators. They're fantastic when they actually have a new mandate and they will get in touch, but they're pretty poor when you approach them and also keeping you in the loop. And there are loads of recruitment companies, I'm afraid, who seem to post fake jobs just as a way of generating CVs and contact details. So it's not really too surprising why recruiters have come out so badly this year. But it does change every year. But the one thing that's consistent is that estate agents always rank fourth and financial advisors fifth, but it's the top slots which tend to interchange between recruiters and credit card companies.
In terms of what we've learned during COVID-19, do you feel, and from what and the data, etc., is there more demand for transparency amongst professions?
Yes, there is, and this is very prevalent in the financial services industry. You'll be aware the regulators are making great strides to make sure there's more transparency when financial advisors or bank advisors are recommending certain products. But I don't think this transparency necessarily affects recruiters at the moment. And there is a very strong correlation between the worst professions and the way they're paid. And of course, the worst professions tend to be very much on a commission basis only, not salaried.
In terms of other correlations as well, I'm thinking of that top five list of the ne'er-do-wells in certain organisation. I mean, cold calling seems to be something of a shared problem amongst those professions. Does that crop up?
Yes, it does. And it's a evil necessity sometimes. We all do cold calling. You know, I've done it in the past. And if you don't know the person, that is classified as an unsolicited cold call. So you have to do it from time to time, but it's the way you do it. And I think that certain professions don't necessarily train their staff well enough to actually conduct a cold call. I'm sure we all get them. And if someone actually was presenting the case correctly, introducing their name, the purpose of the call, not actually spending 2 minutes talking about the weather, hi Nigel, how are you? I wouldn't be so offended, but it's the approach that is often an issue. So I think it's a question of more training. And in Europe, in the UK, if you want to come off a cold calling list, you can go to something called the TPS, and in 30 days, big companies will not call you anymore. And if they do, you can fine them. And obviously it'd be great if there was some sort of standard here in the UAE to cut back on the number of cold calls, which really do irritate people and also affect the profession of that company.
Will we ever see an end to cold calling, do you think, Nigel? Will we ever see it stamped out?
No, it's difficult over here because there are certain CEOs of certain professions who actually do lots of social media saying cold calling is not dead and it should still be used alongside digital marketing. So until they enter the real world and realise that cold calling will affect the reputation of their firm and their sector, unfortunately, it will carry on. So it will always be in existence, but I just do wish the approach would be more professional.
Morning, Nigel. Richard here. Let's get personal.
Hey, Richard.
How do market researchers and journalists rank in your survey?
They don't come out too badly. I mean, we list about 12 professions, which does include media market research, but they never appear in the top 8. Bank advisors occasionally pop in, and we do have an open-ended question at the end where people can write in any profession, but the focus is always on these same estate agents, recruiters, credit card companies, financial advisors. So it doesn't really move year in, year out.
Just on that as well, and I mean, I'm looking at the list and financial advisors. I think we've all got a story or two about a bad apple from the financial advice industry. But do they affect the reputation of the whole industry as well?
Yeah, there are certain firms, I won't name them for defamation reasons, who definitely are very active on cold calling, and that does affect the image of the industry. But I think what's worse, and I know I've touched on this before, are the number of unregulated firms here. They still exist in great numbers. The regulators don't seem to be doing anything to close them down. And it really annoys me when I see them running advertorials in some well-known local newspapers. They're not regulated, but the magazine, the publishers, turned a blind eye to their regulatory status and are still willing to take their money for them to advertise. And there's one company which is spending a fortune on digital and advertising. They work from a very prestigious tower here in Dubai, and they're totally unregulated, making claims that they can generate about 30% a year for their clients. These are the things which I think really need to be tackled, more importantly than cold calling from financial advisory firms.
And in 30 seconds, Nigel Sillitoe, your best advice to put paid to a cold caller out there? How do you deal with them?
I'm just very short. I say thank you, but no thank you. And I don't care which company they're from. I just don't entertain the call for longer than 10 seconds. But I'm polite.
Nigel, we much appreciate your time this morning. We much appreciate the insight as well. The latest findings are out from Insight Discovery. Nigel is their CEO, and they've just released their 2021 worst reputation or worst reputable professions, I should say, not companies here in the UAE. So big thanks to Nigel.